A CEO marries a stranger in a blind marriage to escape the weight of his wealth. But when she's revealed as a former cleaning staff who knows his darkest flaws, their love will need to battle corporate betrayal, family sabotage, and a revolution of the heart. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. The large glass windows of Thompson Technologies reflected the morning sunlight as Ethan Harrington walked into his office. At 35, he had everything money could buy: a penthouse in Manhattan, a collection of sports cars, and a company worth billions. But something was missing, and he knew exactly what it was. "Another breakup?" asked Jack Peterson, his best friend and company vice president. Walking into the office with 2 cups of coffee, Ethan took one of the cups and sighed. "Sarah left me last night. Said she couldn't handle wondering if I thought she was just after my money." Jack sat down in one of the leather chairs facing Ethan's desk. "That's the 3rd one this year, buddy. Maybe you need to try something different." "Different how? Every woman I meet either wants my money or can't handle the fact that I have it." Ethan walked to the window, looking down at the busy New York streets below. "I'm tired of it, Jack. I'm tired of being alone." "Well, funny you should mention that." Jack pulled out his phone and showed Ethan a website. "Have you heard of Elite Matches?" Ethan frowned. "A matchmaking service? Really?" "Not just any matchmaking service. They specialize in something called blind marriages. Couples get matched based on personality and values, but they don't meet until the wedding day." "That's crazy," Ethan laughed, but then stopped when he saw Jack's serious expression. "You're not actually suggesting—" "Why not? Think about it. The woman won't know who you are until after you're married. No chance of her being after your money." Ethan walked back to his desk and sat down heavily in his chair. "A blind marriage? My mother would have a heart attack." "Your mother has a heart attack every time you sneeze," Jack pointed out. "Come on, what do you have to lose?" Later that evening, in his empty penthouse, Ethan found himself looking at the Elite Matches website again. The idea was crazy, but maybe that's exactly what he needed. He thought about his last few relationships: Sarah, who couldn't handle his wealth; Jennifer, who turned out to be more interested in his bank account than him; and Maria, who couldn't deal with the pressure of dating a public figure. He picked up his phone and called Jack. "Remember that crazy idea you had? I think I want to try it." The Elite Matches office was nothing like Ethan expected. Instead of the flashy decor he was used to seeing in Manhattan businesses, it was warm and homey, with comfortable furniture and soft lighting. The woman who greeted him, Mrs. Rodriguez, looked more like a favorite aunt than a high-end matchmaker. "The process is quite thorough, Mr. Harrington," she explained, serving him tea in a delicate cup. "We conduct extensive interviews, psychological evaluations, and background checks. We look at values, life goals, and personality compatibility. The only thing we don't consider is physical appearance or social status." "And it really works?" Ethan asked, skeptical despite himself. Mrs. Rodriguez smiled. "We have a 95% success rate. Our couples stay together because they connect on a deeper level first. Everything else comes second." Over the next few weeks, Ethan found himself going through the most intense personal evaluation of his life. He answered questions about everything, from his childhood to his dreams for the future. He took personality tests, had long conversations with counselors, and even wrote essays about what he wanted in a partner. "This is more thorough than my Harvard application," he joked to Jack one day. "Maybe that's why it works," Jack replied. "They're not matching people based on whether they look good in photos together." A month later, Mrs. Rodriguez called him back to her office. "Mr. Harrington, we believe we've found your match." Ethan's heart started beating faster. "Already?" "Sometimes we know right away when we have the right pair," she smiled. "Would you like to proceed?" The next few weeks passed in a blur of preparations. Everything was arranged through the agency: the wedding venue, the guest list, even Ethan's tuxedo. The only thing he knew about his bride was that her name was Serenity. The night before the wedding, Ethan sat in his penthouse nursing a glass of scotch. "What am I doing, Jack?" "You're taking a chance on love," Jack answered, sitting across from him. "That's braver than any business deal you've ever made." The wedding day dawned bright and clear. The small chapel was decorated simply but elegantly, with white flowers and soft ribbons. Only 30 guests were present, close family and friends, who had been sworn to secrecy about the unusual nature of the ceremony. Ethan stood at the altar, his heart pounding. The door opened, and soft music began to play. And then he saw her, or rather the shape of her, wrapped in a flowing white gown and covered by a delicate veil that completely obscured her features. As she walked down the aisle, Ethan noticed how gracefully she moved. When she reached him and took his hand, her touch was warm and gentle. "Trust your heart," she whispered, and her voice was like music, soft, warm, and somehow familiar, though he couldn't place it. The ceremony was short and simple. They exchanged traditional vows, their voices steady despite the extraordinary circumstances. When the minister announced, "You may now kiss the bride," Serenity squeezed his hand gently. "Please," she whispered, "I'd like to wait until we're alone." Something in her voice made Ethan agree without hesitation. They walked back down the aisle together, husband and wife, still strangers in so many ways. The reception was held in a private room at the St. Regis. Serenity sat beside him, still veiled, speaking softly and charmingly to their guests. Ethan found himself increasingly intrigued by her intelligence and wit, by the way she listened intently to everyone who spoke to her, by her gentle laugh. "Are you happy?" his mother asked him during a quiet moment, her face pinched with worry. Ethan realized, surprised to find it was true. There was something about Serenity that felt right, something that went beyond seeing her face or knowing her background. As the evening drew to a close, they made their way to the honeymoon suite. Once inside, Serenity turned to face him. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. Ethan nodded, his heart racing. Slowly, she lifted her veil, and Ethan's world stopped. Standing before him was a face he knew, a face that brought back memories of his worst behavior, of a time when he had been so focused on success that he had forgotten basic human kindness. "Amara?" he whispered, remembering the quiet, dignified woman who had once worked as part of the cleaning staff at his company. The woman he had treated with cold indifference, barely acknowledging her existence. "Hello, Ethan," she said softly, her deep brown eyes meeting his. "We meet again." The weight of recognition, of memory, of shame crashed over him like a wave. How many times had he walked past her without a word? How many times had he dismissed her presence as unimportant? And now here she stood, his wife, more beautiful than he could have imagined, with dignity and grace that made him feel small despite his wealth and status. I don't understand," he managed to say, his voice barely a whisper. Amara's expression was gentle but firm. "Maybe it's time we both understood some things, Ethan. Maybe it's time for both of us to see what's really important in life." And with those words, standing in the elegant honeymoon suite with the woman he had once ignored but was now married to, Ethan Harrington realized his life was about to change in ways he never could have imagined. The morning after the wedding, Ethan woke up alone in the honeymoon suite. For a moment he thought it had all been a dream, but then he saw the note on the pillow next to him. "Gone to get coffee, we need to talk." Amara. Ethan sat up, his head spinning with memories of last night. After the shock of recognition, they had barely spoken. Amara had quietly asked for time to think, and he had given her the bedroom while he spent a sleepless night on the suite's expensive couch. The door opened, and Amara walked in, carrying 2 coffee cups. She had changed into simple jeans and a sweater, looking nothing like the mysterious bride of yesterday. But she was beautiful, even more so in the morning light. "I think it's time we had an honest conversation," she said, handing him a cup. "Don't you?" Ethan took the coffee, his hands shaking. "Slightly. Amara, I don't even know where to start. The way I treated you when you worked at my company was awful," she finished for him, sitting in a chair across from him. "You looked right through me, Ethan. Every single day for 2 years I cleaned your office, organized your files, even brought you coffee sometimes. And you never once looked at me as a person." The truth of her words hit him hard. "I was different then. Success was all I cared about." "Was?" Amara raised an eyebrow. "The Elite Matches interview process was thorough, Ethan. I know exactly who. You are now still a workaholic, still focused on your empire. The difference is, now you're lonely enough to try something as crazy as marrying a stranger. Why did you agree to this? He asked. Was it revenge? To make me feel ashamed? Amara's expression softened slightly. No, Ethan. I agreed because the matching process showed we could be good together. I didn't know it was you until 2 days before the wedding when Mrs. Rodriguez told me. And you still went through with it? I almost didn't, she admitted. But then I thought about what the counselors at Elite Matches had told me about you, about your loneliness, your trust issues, your desire to be loved for yourself and not your money. And I realized that maybe this wasn't just about you learning a lesson. Maybe it was about both of us getting a second chance. Back at Thompson Technologies, rumors were already flying about Ethan's mysterious bride. Jack was fielding calls from reporters and trying to maintain some semblance of privacy. For his friend, Mr. Peterson, Ethan's secretary interrupted. Mrs. Harrington Sr. is here. She seems upset. Jack groaned. Eleanor Harrington burst into the office, her designer suit perfectly pressed despite her agitated state. Where is my son? Who is this woman he married? This is a disaster. Mrs. Harrington, Jack tried to calm her. Ethan is fine. He's on his honeymoon. Honeymoon? He married a complete stranger. We don't know anything about her background, her family, her social status. Maybe that's exactly what Ethan needed, Jack said firmly. Someone who didn't care about any of those things. Meanwhile, in a small cafe near Central Park, Ethan was learning about the Amara he had never bothered to know. After leaving his company, she had gone back to school earning a degree in creative writing. She had published 2 moderately successful novels under a pen name and was working on her 3rd. I used to write during my breaks at your company, she told him. Sometimes I'd sit in your office after hours, using the quiet time to work on my stories. You never knew, of course. I was invisible to you. Shame colored Ethan's face. I wish I could go back and change how I acted. We can't change the past, Ethan, but we can decide what to do now. Amara looked at him seriously. We're legally married. We have 2 choices. We can get an annulment and go our separate ways, or we can try to make this work. What do you want? Ethan asked softly. I want what the matching process promised, a real partnership, but that can only happen if you're ready to see me, really see me, as an equal. Before Ethan could respond, his phone buzzed with urgent messages. His mother had called an emergency board meeting for that afternoon. She's trying to force a meeting about you, Jack's text read. Claims she's worried about company stability with your sudden marriage. Amara saw the messages over his shoulder. And so it begins, she said quietly. Are you ready for what happens when people find out who you married? Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time. He saw strength in her, eyes, dignity in her posture, and intelligence in her expression. I'm not ashamed of who I married, he said firmly. I'm only ashamed of how long it took me to see you. Prove it, Amara challenged. Come with me to the board meeting. Let's face them together. The Thompson Technologies boardroom was packed when Ethan and Amara arrived. Eleanor Harrington sat at the head of the table, but her triumphant expression faltered when she saw them walk in together. Mother, Ethan said clearly, his voice carrying across the room. I'd like to introduce you to my wife, Amara Harrington. She's a published author, a brilliant woman, and yes, she used to work here as part of our cleaning staff. And if anyone has a problem with that, they can take it up with me. The room erupted in whispers. Eleanor's face went pale. Ethan, you can't be serious. This is obviously some kind of scheme. The only scheme, Amara spoke up, her voice calm but firm, was the one that matched. 2 people based on who they are, not what they own or where they come from. Your son and I have a lot to work through, but we're going to do it together. Jack, watching from his seat, couldn't help but smile. For the first time in years, Ethan looked like himself again. Not the cold businessman he'd become, but the friend Jack had known in college, who cared about more than just money and success. Later that night, back in the honeymoon suite, Ethan and Amara sat talking until dawn. They shared stories, dreams, and fears. They talked about their childhoods, their hopes, and what they wanted from life. I can't promise this will be easy, Amara said as the sun began to rise. We both have a lot to learn about each other. I know, Ethan replied, but for the first time in my life, I'm ready to learn. Ready to see what's been in front of me all along. As the morning light filled the room, they both knew this was just the beginning. Their story, born from a blind marriage and years of missed connections, was finally ready to be written. The news about Ethan's marriage to a former cleaning staff member spread through New York's high society like wildfire. Eleanor Harrington had spent the week fielding calls from her country club friends, making excuses and trying to control the damage to the family's reputation. "Mother, you need to stop this," Ethan said firmly. They were sitting in her elaborate dining room, where she had insisted they come for Sunday dinner. "Amara is my wife now, that's not going to change." Eleanor dabbed at her eyes with an expensive silk handkerchief. "Darling, I'm just trying to protect you. How do we know she's not after your money? This whole thing could be an elaborate plan." "She didn't even know it was me she was marrying until 2 days before the wedding," Ethan reminded her. "The matching agency." "Oh, that ridiculous agency," Eleanor interrupted. "For all we know, they could be in on it too." "Really, Ethan? Blind marriage? What were you thinking?" Before Ethan could respond, Amara walked into the dining room. She had dressed carefully for this dinner, wearing a simple but elegant blue dress. "I was thinking," she said calmly, "that I wanted to find someone who would see me for who I am, not what I own or where I come from, just like your son was." Eleanor's face tightened. "Well, you certainly managed that, didn't you? Going from cleaning offices to becoming Mrs. Harrington. Quite a promotion." "Mother!" Ethan started to stand, but Amara placed a gentle hand on his arm. "It's okay, Ethan." She turned to Eleanor. "Mrs. Harrington, I understand your concerns. You want to protect your son. But you should know that when I cleaned offices at Thompson Technologies, I was also writing my first novel. I've published 2 books since then. I have my own income, my own apartment, and my own life. I didn't need Ethan's money then, and I don't need it now." The butler brought in the first course, and an uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Eleanor picked at her food, occasionally making pointed comments about proper upbringing and social obligations. After dinner, in the car ride home, Ethan apologized. "I'm so sorry about my mother. She's just set in her ways," Amara finished for him. "Like someone else I used to know." Ethan had the grace to look embarrassed. "I deserved that, but I'm trying to change." "I know you are," Amara said softly. "That's why I'm still here." The next morning, Ethan arrived at his office to find Jack waiting with a serious expression. "We have a problem," his friend said, holding up a tabloid magazine. The headline screamed, "Thompson Tech CEO's secret marriage to former janitor, love or corporate espionage." Ethan snatched the magazine, his face growing dark as he read. The article suggested that Amara had been planted by their biggest competitor, Maxwell Industries, to spy on Thompson Technologies years ago. It painted their marriage as the culmination of a long-term corporate takeover plan. "This is ridiculous," Ethan growled. "We need to call our lawyers." "Already done," Jack said. "But there's more. Your mother's been talking to reporters." "What?" "Not directly, but her. Sources close to the family have been feeding them information about Amara's time here, suggesting there were missing files, unauthorized access to your office after hours." Ethan felt sick. This was exactly what he had feared. His mother, trying to protect him by destroying his marriage. Meanwhile, Amara was dealing with her own family crisis. Her younger sister, Tanya, had shown up at her apartment in tears. "How could you not tell me?" Tanya demanded. "My own sister gets married and I have to find out from the tabloids?" "It was complicated, Tanya," Amara tried to explain. "Everything happened so fast. Fast. You married Ethan Harrington, the same man who used to treat you like you were invisible. Remember all those nights you came home crying because of how he and his stuck-up executives acted? People can change, Tanya. Can they?" Tanya pulled out her phone and showed Amara the tabloid article. "Because from what I'm reading, his family sure hasn't." Amara felt her heart sink as she read the accusations. She hadn't told Ethan, but she had been writing during her breaks at Thompson Technologies. Not just her novel, but detailed observations about the company culture, the way wealthy executives treated their service staff, the casual cruelty of the corporate world. Those observations had become the foundation of her first novel, Invisible People, published under her pen name, Sarah Waters. The book had received critical acclaim for its harsh but honest portrayal of corporate America's class divisions. Now, looking at the tabloid accusations, she realized how easy it would be for people to twist her past into something sinister. Her notes could be seen as corporate espionage. Her novel could be portrayed as revenge. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. "We need to talk. My mother's trying to destroy us." At that moment, Eleanor Harrington was sitting in her private study, meeting with a private investigator. "I want everything you can find on Amara Johnson," she said, writing out a check. "Every detail, every connection, every secret. My son may be blinded by whatever spell she's cast, but I'm going to protect him whether he likes it or not." The investigator nodded, taking the check. "What about her publishing career, this Sarah Waters pen name?" Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "Find out everything. If she's written a single word about my son or his company, I want to know about it." Back at their penthouse, Ethan and Amara sat facing each other, the tabloid magazine between them on the coffee table. "I need to tell you something," they both said at the same time. "You first," Ethan said. Amara took a deep breath. "I wrote about you. About the company. It became my first novel." Ethan's face went pale. "What?" "Not using real names," she quickly added. "It's fiction, but it's based on what I saw. How people, like you, treated people like me. I published it under a pen name." "Sarah Waters," Ethan said quietly. "I read that book. Everyone in corporate America read that book. It was brutal. It was honest," Amara said softly. "And now your mother is going to use it to try to destroy our marriage." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached across and took her hand. "No," he said firmly. "She's not. Because I'm going to tell the world that you were right. About all of it. About how I used to be, about what needs to change. Ethan, that could damage your company. Maybe my company needs some damage," he said. "Maybe we all need to face some hard truths." As they sat there holding hands, neither of them knew that Eleanor's private investigator was already building a file that would test their newfound trust in ways they couldn't imagine. The real storm was just beginning. The morning headlines hit like a bomb. Corporate critic Sarah Waters revealed as Thomson CEO's new wife. Eleanor Harrington's private investigator had done his job well, exposing Amara's secret identity to the press. Ethan's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Board members, shareholders, and reporters all wanted comments about how the author who had written such a scathing critique of corporate culture was now married to one of New York's biggest CEOs. "Turn it off," Amara said, watching him stare at the endless stream of messages. They were in their penthouse where they'd been hiding since the story broke. "We knew this was coming." "Not like this," Ethan replied, running his hands through his hair. "My mother... She's trying to make it look like you married me just to write another expose. The shareholders are panicking." Just then, Jack burst through the door, waving a stack of papers. "You need to see this," he said, spreading them on the coffee table. "Someone leaked early drafts of Amara's new book to the press." Amara went pale. "What? Those were private. They were on my personal laptop, which was mysteriously hacked last night," Jack said grimly. "The excerpts are already online. They're not good, Ethan." The drafts were from Amara's upcoming novel, a story about a wealthy businessman who falls from grace. The similarities to Ethan's life were impossible to ignore. "I started writing it before I knew you were my match," Amara said quickly, seeing Ethan's face. "I was going to change it, delete it." "That's not how it looks," Jack interrupted. "The press is having a field day. They're calling it your revenge plot. Marry the CEO, then destroy him with your next book." Ethan stood up and walked to the window, his back to them. "Were any of it real?" he asked quietly. "The matching process, the connection we felt, was it all just research for your book?" "How can you ask me that?" Amara's voice cracked. "After everything we've shared." "I don't know what to believe anymore," Ethan said. "You've been writing about me for years, Amara. First when you were cleaning my office, now as my wife. How do I know this isn't just another chapter in your story?" Before Amara could answer, Ethan's phone rang again. This time it was his mother. "Darling, you need to come to the house right away," Eleanor said. "The board is meeting here. They're talking about removing you as CEO unless you handle this situation immediately." "What do you mean, handle it?" Ethan asked, though he already knew the answer. "You know exactly what I mean. It's time to end this farce of a marriage before she destroys everything your father built." At Thomson Technologies, the employees were buzzing with gossip. Many remembered Amara from her days on the cleaning staff, and now they were reading her books, recognizing themselves and their colleagues in her stories. "She always was watching everything," one executive said nervously to another. "Remember how she used to stay late, supposedly cleaning? She was taking notes the whole time." Meanwhile, Tanya had rushed to her sister's defense, giving interviews to counter the negative press. "My sister is a brilliant writer who tells the truth about how the wealthy treat people they think are beneath them," she told reporters. "If that makes some people uncomfortable, maybe they should look at their own behavior." But the damage was spreading. Maxwell Industries, Thomson Technologies' biggest competitor, was using the scandal to poach clients. Can you trust a company run by a man who can't even see what's happening in his own home? Their sales team whispered to worried customers. Back at the penthouse, Amara was packing a bag. "I'm going to stay with Tanya for a while," she told Ethan. "Give you some space to think." "Running away?" he asked bitterly. "Or just need some quiet time to write about all this?" Amara stopped, her hands shaking as she folded a sweater. "You know what hurts the most? That after everything, you're acting exactly like the man I used to write about, the one who judges people based on assumptions instead of truth." "The truth?" Ethan laughed harshly. "I don't even know what that is anymore. Was anything real, Amara? Or was I just your ticket to an insider's view of corporate America?" "You want the truth." Amara's voice rose. "Yes, I wrote about you. Guess I used my experiences in your company to show the world how the other half lives. But I also fell in love with you, you stubborn blind man. I fell in love with the person I saw you becoming, the one who finally started seeing people as human beings instead of furniture." Her words hung in the air between them. Before Ethan could respond, Jack rushed back in. "Problem," he said quickly. "Someone just sent the board recordings of Amara's conversations from when she worked here. Private conversations with other cleaning staff, complaining about management. They're using it as evidence that she was gathering intelligence for Maxwell Industries." "That's ridiculous," Amara exploded. "Those were private venting sessions. How with my co-workers?" "Doesn't matter," Jack said grimly. "Your mother," he looked at Ethan, "has convinced half the board that this whole marriage was a corporate espionage plot. They're voting tomorrow morning on whether to force Ethan out." Ethan sank into a chair, his world crumbling around him. Everything he'd built, everything he'd inherited from his father was at risk, and the woman he'd started to trust, to love. "I need to go," Amara said quietly, picking up her bag. "You have some decisions to make, Ethan. About who you trust, what you believe, and what kind of man you really want to be." She walked to the door, then turned back. "You know where to find me when you figure it out. The real question is, will you be looking for your wife or for Sarah Waters?" After she left, Ethan sat in the darkening penthouse, holding a copy of Invisible People in his hands. As he began to read it again, this time knowing it was Amara's words, he realized he was reading not just a critique of corporate culture, but a love story in reverse. The story of a woman who saw the humanity in everyone, even those who refused to see it in her. His phone buzzed again. Another message from his mother. "The lawyers have the annulment papers ready. Come home, darling. Let's fix this mess." Ethan stared at the message for a long time, then looked at the book in his hands. Tomorrow morning, he would have to choose between his company and his marriage, between his mother's version of the truth and Amara's, between who he used to be and who he was becoming. The night stretched ahead of him, long and lonely, filled with the kind of silence that forces a man to finally hear the truth in his own heart. The Thompson mansion was unusually busy for 7 a.m. Board members in expensive suits filed into the large conference room that Eleanor had set up in the East Wing. Coffee was being served in fine china cups, but the atmosphere was anything but civilized. "Sign here," Eleanor said, pushing the annulment papers across the mahogany table to where Ethan sat. "Once this is done, we can convince the board that she tricked you. You'll keep your position as CEO, and this whole embarrassing incident will become yesterday's news." Ethan stared at the papers, his father's heavy fountain pen sitting next to them, the same pen his father had used to sign everything important in his life. "Where did you get the recordings?" he asked quietly. "What?" "The recordings of Amara talking to other cleaning staff, the ones that mysteriously appeared just when you needed them. Where did you get them?" Eleanor's face tightened. "That's not important right now. What's important is protecting this family's legacy. You had her followed, didn't you? Even back then. You probably had all the cleaning staff monitored." "Of course I did," Eleanor burst out. "Someone had to protect this company. Your father worked too hard building it to let just anyone walk in and clean it?" Ethan stood up suddenly. "Tell me something, Mother. When did you first have Amara investigated? When she was just a cleaning lady, or when you found out she was my match?" "Both," said a quiet voice from the doorway. Jack stood there, holding a file. "I did some digging of my own. Your mother had surveillance equipment installed in all the maintenance areas 6 years ago. Every break room conversation, every after-hours chat, it was all recorded." Eleanor's face went pale. "Jack, you're overstepping." "And then," Jack continued, walking into the room, "when Elite Matches told you Amara was Ethan's bride-to-be, you hired someone to hack her laptop, to leak her new book, to make it look like she was a corporate spy. I was protecting my son. You were protecting yourself," Ethan said, his voice hard. "You couldn't stand the idea of someone from the cleaning staff becoming part of this family, just like you couldn't stand it when Dad promoted Jack to VP because he came from the wrong side of town." Meanwhile, across town, Amara was sitting in Tanya's small apartment, trying to write. Her laptop screen remained blank, just like it had been all night. "You should eat something," Tanya said, bringing her a cup of tea. "I'm not hungry." Amara stared out the window. "I keep thinking about all those people at Thompson Technologies. My friends from the cleaning staff, the security guards, the maintenance workers. All of them had their private conversations recorded. All because Eleanor Harrington thought they might be. Threats. That's the kind of thing you write about," Tanya pointed out. "The way the rich protect their wealth by treating everyone else like criminals." "But it's different now," Amara said softly. "Now it's not just a story. It's my life. These are real people, Tanya. Real lives being affected." Her phone buzzed, another reporter wanting a comment. They'd been calling all night, offering money for her story, asking if she was working on a new book about the scandal. Back at the Thompson mansion, the board meeting was about to begin. Eleanor sat at the head of the table, the annulment papers, still unsigned in front of Ethan's empty chair. "Where is he?" one of the board members asked. "Getting coffee," Eleanor said smoothly, but her hands were shaking slightly as she reached for her own cup. In fact, Ethan was in his father's old study, sitting at the massive desk where he'd watched his father work when he was a boy. The study looked exactly as it had when Thompson was alive. The same books on the shelves, the same worn leather chair, the same old photos on the walls. One photo caught his eye. It showed his father standing with a group of employees at the company's first holiday party. Everyone was smiling, from the executives to the maintenance staff. His father had known everyone's names, their stories, their families. "He would be ashamed of what we've become," Jack said from the doorway. "Did you know," Ethan said, still looking at the photo, "that Dad used to have lunch in the employee break room every Friday? He said you couldn't run a company if you didn't know the people who kept it running. I remember. That's how he found out I was taking night classes in business school. Started mentoring me right there in that break room." Ethan turned to his friend. "I need your help. You know you've got it. What's the plan?" "First, I need you to get every recording my mother made of the cleaning staff. Every single one." "Already done," Jack patted his briefcase. "And I found something interesting. You should hear what Amara used to say about you when she thought no one was listening." "Later," Ethan stood up. "Right now I need you to delay the board while I go see my wife." "And the annulment papers?" Ethan picked up his father's fountain pen and snapped it in half. "I think that answers that question." The drive to Tanya's apartment gave Ethan time to think about his father's legacy, about the kind of man he wanted to be, about the woman who had seen both the worst and the best in him. When he knocked on Tanya's door, it was with the same determination he'd seen in his father's eyes in that old photograph, the look of a man who knew exactly what mattered most. Amara opened the door, her eyes red from lack of sleep. "Ethan, I need to show you something," he said, holding up Jack's briefcase. "All of it, everything my mother recorded. But first, I need you to know that I choose you. Over the company, over my mother's expectations, over everything. I choose you." Tanya appeared in the hallway behind her sister. "The board meeting can wait," Ethan said firmly. "Right now I need to listen to these recordings with my wife. I need to hear how she really saw me back then. And then we need to write a new story together, not about invisible people, but about people who finally learned to see each other." Amara's hands trembled as she took the briefcase. "You'll lose everything." "No," Ethan smiled, taking her hand. "I'll finally have what matters most. The question is, are you ready to write this chapter with me?" Behind them, Tanya quietly closed the door, leaving them alone with their past, their present, and a future that was about to be rewritten on their own terms. The Thompson Technologies boardroom was in chaos. Eleanor Harrington stood at the head of the table, her perfectly manicured hands gripping the back of her chair. "What do you mean he's not coming?" she demanded. Jack stood calmly at the other end of the table. "Ethan's exactly where he needs to be, with his wife." "This is outrageous," one of the board members exclaimed. "We're here to vote on his future as CEO, and he doesn't even show up." "Actually," Jack said, placing a thick folder on the table, "we're here to vote on something else entirely." He started passing out documents to each board member. "These papers show every illegal surveillance operation that's been conducted in this company over the past 6 years. Every recorded conversation, every hacked email, every privacy violation, all ordered by Eleanor Harrington." Eleanor's face went white. "You can't prove any of that." "Can't I?" Jack pulled out his phone and played a recording. Eleanor's voice filled the room. "I want everything recorded. Every break room, every maintenance closet. I don't care if it's legal or not, just do it." The board members looked at their papers in shock, then at Eleanor. Meanwhile, across town, Ethan and Amara sat in her sister's small living room listening to different recordings. Conversations from years ago when Amara was still part of the cleaning staff. "I don't know," Amara's voice came through the speaker. "Sometimes when I'm cleaning his office late at night, I see him working. He looks so lonely, like he's carrying the weight of the whole company on his shoulders. I wish..." "Wish what?" Another voice asked. "I wish he could see that he doesn't have to do it alone, that there are people all around him who want to help, if he'd just look up from his computer and see them." Ethan reached over and stopped the recording. "You saw me. Even back then you really saw me." "I saw everyone," Amara said softly. "That's what my books are about, seeing the people others ignore. I never meant to hurt you or your company, I just wanted to tell the truth." Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from Jack. "Board in uproar. Your mother's surveillance program exposed. Need you here ASAP." "We have to go," Ethan said, standing up. "Together." When Ethan and Amara walked into the boardroom hand in hand, Eleanor was in the middle of defending herself. "Everything I did was to protect this company," she insisted. "By spying on minimum wage workers," Amara's voice cut through the room. "By recording their private conversations? By treating them like criminals?" All eyes turned to the door. Amara stood tall beside Ethan, no longer the invisible cleaning lady, but a woman who knew her worth. They Cole. "Truth is," Ethan addressed the board, "we've lost our way. This company was built on my father's belief that every employee, from the CEO to the newest janitor, deserves respect. Somewhere along the way, we forgot that." "This is business," Eleanor snapped, "not some sentimental story." "You're right, Mother. This is business, and I'm proposing a new way of doing it." Ethan pulled out his own folder. "These are my plans for restructuring Thompson Technologies. New policies on worker treatment, better wages for support staff, and a complete overhaul of our corporate culture. The shareholders will never approve," one board member protested. "Actually," Jack spoke up, "I've already shown these plans to our major shareholders. Turns out in today's world, treating workers with dignity is good for business." "Who knew? And what about her?" Eleanor pointed at Amara. "The woman who wrote that book attacking us. You mean the book that opened my eyes to what we'd become?" Ethan pulled Amara closer. "I'm proposing that Amara head our new corporate culture division. Who better to help us change than someone who had the courage to tell the truth about what needed changing?" The room erupted in overlapping voices, some protesting, some considering, some already seeing the potential. "If you do this," Eleanor said, her voice shaking, "if you choose her over your own mother—" "I'm not choosing anyone over you, Mother. I'm choosing to be the kind of man Dad would have wanted me to be. The kind of man Amara already knows I can be." One of the older board members cleared his throat. "I knew your father, Ethan. Worked with him for 30 years. What you're proposing, it's exactly what he would have done." Slowly, heads began to nod around the table. Even those who had come ready to vote Ethan out were remembering Thomas Thompson's legacy, not just of profits, but of principles. "I move to vote," Jack said formally, "on both the removal of Eleanor Harrington from the board for ethical violations and on Ethan's proposed changes." Eleanor sank into her chair, finally understanding that she had lost. Not just the company, but her son as well. The vote was quick and decisive. Eleanor was out. Ethan's proposals were in. And Amara. Amara was officially part of the company she had once cleaned. Later that evening, as they left the building together, Ethan stopped by the maintenance closet where Amara used to store her cleaning supplies. "I used to write in here sometimes," she said, opening the door. "When I needed a quiet moment." Ethan pulled her into his arms. "Write our story," he whispered. "All of it. The truth about how a cleaning lady and a CEO found each other. About how love can break down walls we didn't even know we'd built." "You sure?" Amara looked up at him. "Even the parts that don't make you look good? Especially those parts. Because they're also the parts that show how people can change when someone believes in them." They walked out together, past the cleaning crew finishing up their evening work. Ethan stopped to thank each one by name, something he'd never done before, but would never forget to do again. Outside, the city lights twinkled like stars. A new chapter was beginning, not just for them, but for everyone at Thompson Technologies. A chapter about seeing the invisible, hearing the unheard, and learning that the greatest love stories sometimes start in the most unexpected places, like a maintenance closet where a writer once dreamed of being seen, and a lonely CEO finally learned how to see. The morning headlines were different this time. Thompson Technologies announces revolutionary changes, CEO's wife to lead new corporate culture division. Some papers even ran the full story of Amara's journey from cleaning staff to corporate leader, calling it a modern Cinderella story. But real life wasn't a fairy tale, as Amara quickly discovered. Walking into Thompson Technologies as an executive was very different from walking in with a mop and bucket. "Mrs. Harrington," her new assistant said, showing her to a corner office that was bigger than her old apartment. "These are the files. You requested about current employee policies." Amara smiled at the young woman. "Please call me Amara, and thank you, Lisa." Lisa looked surprised that Amara knew her name. I was actually part of the cleaning staff until last week, when Mr. Harrington started the internal promotion program." "I know," Amara said warmly. "I remember you. You used to leave little, encouraging notes for everyone when you cleaned their desks." Down the hall, Ethan was facing his own challenges. Several major clients had called emergency meetings, concerned about the company's dramatic changes. "Mr. Maxwell is waiting in the conference room," Jack reported. "He's threatening to pull all his business unless we return to traditional corporate values." His words. "You mean unless we go back to treating support staff like furniture?" Ethan stood up from his desk. "Let's go talk to him." Robert Maxwell was one of the old guard of New York business, rich, powerful, and set in his ways. He stood at the conference room window, his back to the door, when Ethan walked in. "This is business suicide, Harrington," Maxwell said without turning around. "All this nonsense about worker dignity and corporate culture. What's next? Profit sharing with the janitors?" "Actually, yes," Ethan said calmly. "Along with educational benefits, career development programs, and health care that doesn't treat them like second-class citizens." Maxwell turned, his face red. "Your father—" "My father treated every employee like family," Ethan interrupted. Something we forgot after he died. Something my wife helped me remember. Your wife, Maxwell sneered. The cleaning lady who wrote that book attacking people like us. Is she the one pushing all these changes? No, Bob, I am. Because she helped me see what I should have seen all along, that a company is only as strong as its weakest link. And when you treat any employee as less than human, you weaken the whole chain. Meanwhile, Eleanor Harrington was not taking her removal from the board quietly. She sat in her luxury apartment meeting with her lawyers. There must be something we can do, she insisted. That woman has corrupted my son, turned him against his own mother. Mrs. Harrington, her lawyer said. Carefully, the evidence of illegal surveillance is overwhelming. You're lucky the board isn't pressing criminal charges. Criminal charges? I was protecting our interests by breaking privacy laws, by recording personal conversations without consent. The best thing you can do right now is stay quiet and hope. This blows over. Back at Thompson Technologies, Amara was meeting with a group of cleaning staff in their break room, the same break room where her conversations had once been, secretly recorded. I know some of you are scared, she said, sitting with them. Change is always frightening, but I promise you, these changes are real. You're not just employees anymore, you're part of this company's future. Is it true? One of the older women asked. About the college programs? Completely true, Amara smiled. Full tuition reimbursement for any job-related education. And yes, Maria, that includes your daughter's business classes. The woman's eyes filled with tears. I've worked here for 15 years, cleaning offices while dreaming of my daughter, having a better life. And now she can have that life, Amara finished. And so can all of your children. Later that evening, Ethan found Amara in her new office, surrounded by employee files. How many clients did we lose today? She asked, without looking up. 3, he said, sitting on the edge of her desk. But we gained 5 new ones. Turns out a lot of companies like the idea of working with a business that treats all its employees with respect. And your mother? Ethan sighed. Still threatening legal action, still sure you've brainwashed me into destroying the family legacy. Have I? Amara finally looked up. Sometimes I wonder if I pushed too hard, too fast. Ethan pulled her up from her chair and into his arms. You pushed exactly as hard as I needed, as this company needed. He looked around the office. You know, I can see you writing in here your next book. About what? About hope, about change, about how love can transform not just 2 people, but an entire company. Their moment was interrupted by a knock on the door. Jack stood there looking worried. We have a problem, he said. Maxwell Industries just announced they're launching a hostile takeover bid. They're telling shareholders that our new policies are destroying company value. They're offering to restore traditional management if they gain control. Ethan felt Amara stiffen in his arms. They'd won the battle with the board, but the war for the company's soul was just beginning. Let them try, Ethan said firmly. We'll show them that doing the right thing isn't just morally correct. It's good business. And if we lose, Amara asked softly, then we'll start over, build something new, together. He looked at Jack. Call an emergency meeting. It's time to show Maxwell and everyone else that the days of treating people like disposable resources are over. As they walked to the meeting, they passed the maintenance closet where their story had begun. Amara stopped and touched the door gently. You know what I used to write in here? She asked. What? Someday someone will see us, really see us. I never dreamed that someone would be you. Ethan took her hand, and together they walked toward their next challenge. Behind them, a member of the cleaning staff watched them go, hope shining in her eyes. Change was coming to Thompson Technologies, one heart at a time, and in her luxury apartment, Eleanor Harrington picked up her phone and dialed a number. Mr. Maxwell, we need to talk about my son's company. The sun set over New York City, painting the Thompson Technologies building in shades of gold. Inside, a new story was being written, not just in Amara's next book, but in the lives of every person who worked there. Say a story about visibility, about dignity, and about the kind of love that transforms not just hearts but entire worlds. The news spread through Thompson Technologies like wildfire. Maxwell Industries had already secured support from 20% of the shareholders. With Eleanor Harrington working behind the scenes, they were getting closer to the 51% they needed to take control. "How bad is it?" Amara asked. She and Ethan were in his office, looking out at the New York skyline as storm clouds gathered on the horizon. "Bad," Ethan admitted. "Maxwell's promising the shareholders a 30% return if they go back to the old way of doing things. Cut costs by cutting benefits, outsource the support staff, eliminate the education programs. Everything we've built in the past month," Amara said softly. Just then, Jack burst in. "You need to see this." He turned on the office TV, where Eleanor Harrington was giving an interview on the business news channel. "As a mother, it breaks my heart," Eleanor was saying, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. "This woman has completely changed my son. The Ethan I knew would never risk our family's company on such foolish ideals. That's why I fully support Maxwell Industries' bid to save Thompson Technologies." Ethan switched off the TV, his face hard. "She's trying to make it look like you've brainwashed me." "It's working," Jack reported. 3 more major shareholders just called. They're considering Maxwell's offer. Amara sank into a chair. "Maybe I should resign. If I step down, take myself out of the equation." "No," Ethan said firmly. "We're not giving up, and we're not giving in to their kind of thinking." A knock on the door interrupted them. Lisa, Amara's assistant, stood there looking nervous. "Mrs. Harrington, Amara, the cleaning staff and maintenance workers are all gathering in the main break room. They're scared about the takeover rumors." Amara stood up. "I'll talk to them." "We'll both talk to them," Ethan said, taking her hand. The break room was packed. People who had just started to hope, to dream of better lives, now faced losing everything. Amara recognized faces she'd worked with during her cleaning days. Maria, whose daughter had just started business classes. Tom, who was finally getting treatment for his diabetes under the new healthcare plan. Sarah, whose son had just been accepted into the intern program. "I know you're worried," Amara began. "I know the rumors you're hearing." "They're saying we'll all be fired," someone called out. "That Maxwell Industries will bring in cheap contractors to replace us." "That's not going to happen," Ethan stepped forward. "I promise you, How can you promise?" Maria stood up. "You're losing control of your own company." Before Ethan could respond, his phone buzzed. Another text from the board. Maxwell had just secured another 5% of shares. They were getting closer to their goal. But then something unexpected happened. Tom, the maintenance supervisor, stood up. "I've worked here for 20 years, he said. "Cleaned these floors, fixed these lights, watched people walk past me like I was invisible. Until now. Until you two showed us that we matter." He turned to the room. "How many of us own company shares through the new employee stock program?" Hands went up around the room. Under the new policies, every employee had been given the option to buy company shares at a discounted rate. "How many of our families own shares?" More hands went up. Ethan's eyes widened as he did the math. "Jack," he called, "how many shares are held by employees and their families under the new program?" Jack pulled out his tablet, fingers flying over the screen. "Almost 18% of total shares. Small amounts, but together we have power," Amara finished. She turned to the room. "That's what they're afraid of. Not just our policies, but our unity. They want to divide us, make us feel powerless. But we're not powerless anymore." The room buzzed with energy as people started to understand. They weren't just employees anymore. They were owners, they had a voice, but their victory was short-lived. Eleanor Harrington had one more card to play. That evening, as Ethan and Amara were strategizing in his office, Eleanor walked in unannounced. She wasn't alone. "Hello, Amara," said the man with her. "Or should I say Sarah Waters?" Amara went pale. "Michael Chen. You know him?" Ethan asked. "He was my publisher for my first 2 books. And now I'm Maxwell Industries' head of corporate communications." Chen smiled. "And I have some interesting news about your wife's new book, Ethan. The one she started writing before your marriage." Eleanor's smile was triumphant as Chen pulled out a manuscript. "The board should find this very interesting reading, especially the part where she details her plan to marry into corporate America to expose its corruption from the inside." "That's not what I wrote," Amara protested. "That manuscript was stolen, and you're twisting my words." The shareholders won't see it that way, Eleanor said smoothly. Once this gets out, no one will believe your marriage is anything but a corporate espionage plot. Unless what? Ethan demanded. Unless you step down voluntarily, Eleanor said. Surrender control to Maxwell Industries. Save the family name from scandal. Amara looked at Ethan, tears in her eyes. I never meant... That book was different before I met you. Before I knew you. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. Release it, he said to Chen. What? Eleanor gasped. Release the manuscript. Release all of it. In fact, Ethan turned to Amara. Write the real story. All of it. How we met, how we changed, how we're trying to change this company. Let the world judge us on the truth, not these manipulated lies. The shareholders, Eleanor began. The shareholders will see what real leadership looks like, Ethan said, and they'll have to choose, not between profit and conscience, but between the past and the future. After Eleanor and Chen left, Amara turned to Ethan. You really want me to write our story, even the ugly parts? Especially the ugly parts, he said, because that's where the hope is, in showing how people can change, how companies can change, how love can change everything. Outside his office, the lights of the city twinkled like stars. Somewhere out there, Eleanor and Maxwell were plotting their next move. The battle for Thompson Technologies was far from over. But in that moment, holding each other in the office, where their story had begun, Ethan and Amara knew one thing for certain. They would face whatever came next together. Not just as husband and wife, but as partners in a revolution of the heart. And in break rooms and maintenance closets throughout the building, people who had once been invisible began to spread the word. The real power of Thompson Technologies wasn't in its stock price or its profit margins, it was in its people, all of its people, and they weren't going down without a fight. The Thompson Technologies auditorium was packed. Every employee, from executives to maintenance staff, had gathered for what the press was calling the most unusual shareholders' meeting in corporate history. Are you ready? Jack asked, adjusting Amara's microphone. No, she admitted, peeking through the curtain at the crowd. But it doesn't matter. It's time for the truth. On the other side of the stage, Eleanor Harrington sat with Robert Maxwell and Michael Chen looking smug. They had released parts of Amara's manuscript to select shareholders, carefully edited to make it look like she had planned everything from the beginning. The whole world is watching, Ethan said, taking Amara's hand. News cameras lined the back of the auditorium, ready to broadcast live. Good, Amara squeezed his hand. Let them see all of it. The meeting began with Robert Maxwell presenting his case. He stood at the podium, confident and commanding. Thompson Technologies has lost its way, he announced. Under Ethan Harrington's leadership, we've abandoned sound business principles for feel-good policies that are destroying shareholder value. And why? Because he fell for a scheme orchestrated by a woman who infiltrated this company to destroy it from within. Murmurs ran through the crowd. Maxwell held up a stack of papers. We have proof, her own words, describing how she would marry into corporate power to expose its weaknesses. This isn't a love story, ladies and gentlemen. It's corporate espionage dressed up as romance. Eleanor stood up next, tears in her eyes. As a mother, it breaks my heart to say this, but my son has been deceived. This woman, she pointed at Amara, used his loneliness, his desire for real connection, to worm her way into our family and our company. Then Michael Chen read selected passages from Amara's manuscript, carefully chosen to sound damning. The shareholders listened, faces growing concerned. Finally, it was Amara's turn. She walked to the podium, her steps steady despite her racing heart. Everything they just said is true, she began, causing gasps in the audience. And completely false. She pulled out her own stack of papers. These are the original recordings that Eleanor Harrington made of me when I worked here as part of the cleaning staff, the complete unedited versions. I'd like to play some of them for you. Before Eleanor could object, Amara pressed play. Her voice filled the auditorium. I wish they could see what I see when I clean these offices late at night. The security guard sharing his dinner with a homeless man outside. The maintenance worker staying late to fix a broken heater so people won't be cold in the morning. The janitor who leaves encouraging notes on people's desks when they're working. Over time, there's so much humanity here, so much kindness, if only the people at the top could see it. Another recording played. Mr. Harrington looked so tired today. Everyone thinks he's cold and uncaring, but I've seen him when he thinks no one's watching. The way he stares at his father's picture, like he's trying to live up to something. The way his hands shake when he has to lay people off. He's not heartless, he's just lost. Eleanor tried to stand to interrupt, but Ethan raised his hand. Let her finish, Mother. Let everyone hear the truth for once. Amara continued, her voice growing stronger. Yes, I wrote about this company. Yes, I used my experiences here in my books. And yes, I agreed to a blind marriage through elite matches, but not as part of some scheme. I did it because I believed in love, in second chances, in the possibility that people can change when they finally see each other as human beings. She turned to face the shareholders directly. You have a choice to make today. Maxwell Industries is offering you a return to the past, to a world where people are just numbers on a spreadsheet. We're offering you something different, a company where every person matters, where profit comes from treating people with dignity, not exploiting them. Profits are down 15% since these changes, Maxwell shouted. Actually, Jack stood up, profits are down 3%, but employee retention is up 60%. Training costs are down 40%, and our client satisfaction ratings are the highest they've been in company history. Because happy employees do better work, Ethan joined Amara at the podium. My father knew that. Somewhere along the way we forgot it, but now... He was interrupted by Maria, who stood up in the audience. My daughter just finished her first business class, she announced, paid for by this company. In 20 years of cleaning offices, no one ever cared about my family's future before. Now they do. Tom stood up next. My diabetes medicine used to cost more than my rent. Now, under the new healthcare plan, I can afford both my medicine and food for my kids. One by one, employees stood up, sharing stories of how the company's new policies had changed their lives. Stories of dignity restored, of hope renewed, of futures reclaimed. Eleanor watched in growing horror as her carefully constructed plan began to crumble. But she had one last card to play. The final vote count, she announced, holding up a paper. With proxy votes included, Maxwell Industries has secured 49% of shares. We only need 2% more to take control. That's right, Robert Maxwell smiled. And we have commitments from several major shareholders who are ready to sell. By tomorrow morning, this little experiment in corporate socialism will be over. But then Lisa, Amara's assistant, stood up. Excuse me. I've been calculating something. All eyes turned to her. The employee stock program. If we count all the shares held by employees and their families, plus the shares held by clients who support the new policies. She looked up from her tablet. We have 52%. The room erupted in chaos. Maxwell's face turned purple. Eleanor sank into her chair. You see, Amara said into the sudden quiet, when you treat people like family, they become family. When you give them a stake in something, they fight for it. That's not socialism, Mr. Maxwell, that's just good business. Ethan took the podium for the final word. The vote will go forward tomorrow as planned, but tonight, I want everyone to go home and think about what kind of company they want to work for, what kind of world they want to build, and what kind of people they want to be. As the crowd began to disperse, Eleanor approached her son one last time. You've destroyed everything your father built, she said bitterly. No, Mother, Ethan replied gently. I finally understood what he was really building all along. A company where everyone matters, everyone belongs, everyone is seen. The news cameras kept rolling as Ethan and Amara walked off the stage hand in hand. Tomorrow would bring the final vote, but tonight, in break rooms and boardrooms throughout Thomson Technologies, people were already sharing a new story. A story about a cleaning lady and a CEO, about seeing the invisible, about love that transforms not just hearts, but entire companies. And somewhere, in the original maintenance closet, where Amara used to write, someone had posted a new note. Tomorrow belongs to all of us. The morning of the shareholder vote dawned bright and clear. News vans lined the street outside Thompson Technologies, their satellite dishes pointing skyward like metal flowers reaching for the sun. Inside his office, Ethan stood at the window, watching the crowds gather below. The same window where he'd once looked down at the world, seeing nothing but numbers and profits. Now he saw people, each with their own stories, their own dreams. "Nervous?" Amara asked, joining him at the window. "No," he smiled, taking her hand. "For the first time in my life, I know exactly who I am and what I'm fighting for." Jack burst in, waving a stack of papers. "Final count from the employee stock program. We have 53%. Maxwell can't win." But Amara's face remained serious. "It's not about winning anymore, it's about healing." Down in the lobby, Eleanor Harrington arrived with Robert Maxwell and their team of lawyers. Her face was set in hard lines, but there was something different in her eyes. A tiredness, a hint of doubt. The shareholder meeting was set for 10 o'clock in the main auditorium. As people filed in, Amara noticed something unexpected. The usual divisions, executives in the front, support staff in the back, had disappeared. People sat mixed together, talking, sharing stories. "It's already changing," she whispered to Ethan. Before the official vote could begin, Ethan asked to speak. He walked to the podium, but instead of standing behind it, he moved to the front of the stage and sat on the edge, closer to everyone. "Before we vote, I want to tell you a story," he began. "It's about a man who had everything money could buy but couldn't see what really mattered, and about a woman who cleaned his office every night, seeing not just the dirt that needed to be swept away, but the humanity that needed to be uncovered." He looked at his mother in the front row. "It's about a family that forgot what makes a company truly strong. And about love, not just between two people, but between all people who share a common dream." Eleanor's hands trembled in her lap as her son continued. "My father used to say that a company is like a family. Every member precious, every voice important. We forgot that after he died. We became so focused on profits that we stopped seeing people." He turned to Maxwell. "You say our new policies are bad for business. Let me show you something." Jack started a slideshow. Pictures filled the screen. Maria's daughter graduating from her first business class, Tom playing with his kids in the park instead of working 3 jobs to pay for. His medicine, the new daycare center filled with employees' children. "This is business," Ethan said firmly. "Happy employees, healthy families, hope for the future. Our productivity is up. Our turnover is down. Our clients are more satisfied than ever, because when people feel valued, they create value." "But the costs," Maxwell started to object. "The costs of treating people like disposable resources are far higher." Amara stood up. "I know, I wrote about it. Not to destroy this company, but to save it, to remind it of its soul." She walked to join Ethan. "You all read pieces of my manuscript, carefully selected to sound sinister. Now I want to read you the real ending, the part I wrote last night." She pulled out her notebook, the same one she used to write in during her cleaning days. Love changes everything. Not just romantic love, but the kind of love that sees the divine in every human being. The kind of love that turns cleaning ladies into executives, that transforms cold businessmen into compassionate leaders, that reminds us all that we're more than our job titles or bank accounts. We're human beings, worthy of dignity, deserving of respect, capable of amazing things when someone finally sees us. Quiet fell over the auditorium. Even Maxwell looked thoughtful. "The vote is yours," Ethan said. "But remember, you're not just voting on who controls this company. You're voting on what kind of world you want to build." Eleanor Harrington stood up slowly. All eyes turned to her. "I've spent decades protecting this company," she said, her voice shaking. "Protecting my son, protecting our position in society. But today..." She looked around the room, really seeing the faces for the first time. "Today I realized that maybe I was the one who needed protection from my own fear, my own prejudice." She walked to the stage, tears streaming down her face. "I'd like to withdraw my support for the Maxwell takeover, and..." She turned to Amara. "I'd like to ask my daughter-in-law for forgiveness." The room burst into applause as Amara hugged her mother-in-law. Maxwell, seeing the tide turn, quietly gathered his papers and slipped out. The official vote was almost anticlimactic. The employees' shares, combined with those who supported Ethan's vision, created an overwhelming majority. Thompson Technologies would remain under Ethan's leadership, committed to its new path. Later that evening, Ethan and Amara returned to the maintenance closet where their story began. The cleaning supplies were gone now. It had been turned into a small library for employees to read or write during their breaks. "Remember the first time you saw me?" Amara asked, running her hand along the shelf where she used to keep her notebook. "I wish I could say I did," Ethan admitted. "But I didn't really see you then. I didn't see anyone. And now? Now I see everything. Everyone." He pulled her close. "You know what the best part of a blind marriage turned out to be?" "What?" "Learning to see with my heart instead of my eyes." They walked through the building together, stopping to chat with the evening cleaning crew, sharing jokes with the security guards, listening to stories from the maintenance staff. The invisible people had become family. Outside, the city lights twinkled as another workday ended at Thompson Technologies. But inside, something magical continued to grow. A revolution of the heart, spreading from person to person, floor to floor, life to life. In her office, Amara finished the final page of her new book. They say love is blind, but real love helps. Just see the beauty in others, the potential in ourselves, and the possibility of a world where no one is invisible, where every person matters, where love changes everything. And in homes across the city, Thompson Technologies employees told their families a different kind of bedtime story. About a cleaning lady and a CEO, about second chances and first loves, about veils lifted and hearts opened, about a company that remembered its soul. Because sometimes the greatest love stories aren't just about two people finding each other. They're about everyone finding their place, their voice, their value. And sometimes the most powerful changes don't come from boardroom decisions or shareholder votes. They come from simple moments of seeing, really seeing the people around us. As Ethan and Amara left the building that night hand in hand, they passed the company's motto, newly carved into the lobby wall: "Every person matters, every story counts, every heart belongs." The security guard smiled and waved as they passed. "Good night, Mr. and Mrs. Harrington." "Good night, Bill," they replied together, knowing his name, knowing his story, knowing that love, real love, changes everything. And somewhere in the city, Eleanor Harrington sat in her apartment reading Invisible People for the first time. Not with anger or fear, but with new eyes, understanding finally that her son hadn't lost his way. He'd found it. They all had. The end.